To mark the 200th anniversary of the founding of the town of Greece, the Greece Historical Society presents a Bicentennial Snapshot. Each week we take a look at a particular aspect of Greece history. Today and next week our topic is Henpeck, Hoosick, and Hojack. What's in a name? This week we take a small detour from our look at the different sections of the town of Greece to consider the questions of names, whether those of the neighborhoods, streets, bodies of water, or transportation lines. As mentioned in Snapshot 16, we know the commercial hub of the town, Eddy, was named after Eddy, Michigan, a former home of the postmaster William Anderson. However, how South Greece gained the moniker Henpeck is a puzzle. The term henpecked has been around since the 1600s and denotes a meek, submissive husband who is constantly nagged by his wife like a hen pecking constantly at the ground. New York author Washington Irving's Rip Van Winkle was a henpecked husband. That's the reason given most often for South Greece's nickname. Some say it was called Henpeck because its residents claimed to be henpecked by their spouses. Would the male inhabitants of a rough-and-tumble canal port really admit that? A canal enthusiast who helped get Henpeck Park developed had another theory. He said in a news account that he knew of stories that the name was linked to a type of hen developed in the vicinity. A third possibility? The town of Sandusky in Cattaraugus County was the hometown of longtime journalist and chronicler of local history, Arch Merrill. He wrote in several of his columns that Sandusky used to be called Henpeck. Perhaps like William Anderson and Eddy, a former resident from the southern tier brought the name with him. We may never know how South Greece came to be called Henpeck, but that's one of the joys of researching local history. One day you might uncover a document that answers the question. Hoosick was the nickname for West Greece, which will be the focus of Snapshot 20. A humorous accounting for that name has been handed down through the years. Dr. Samuel Beach Bradley practiced medicine for many years in West Greece, and as the legend goes, he had a neighbor, Mrs. Rosa Manley, who, whenever the good doctor drove by her house, would stand on her porch, flapping her calico apron wildly and crying out, "Dr. Bradley, who's sick? Who's sick? Who's sick?" Historical research, however, documents a more pedestrian explanation for the name. The people who first settled in West Greece came from Hoosick Falls, near Albany, and the name was in use long before Dr. Bradley ever lived there. History is inconclusive about whom Braddock Bay was named after, but most histories theorize that it was named after a British general. During the French and Indian War, most likely near the end of June 1759, General John Prideaux camped on the shores of the bay with 2,000 of his troops, and with them were another 1,000 Haudenosaunee warriors under the command of Sir William Johnson. They were on their way to successfully lay siege to the French-occupied Fort Niagara in July. Alas, Johnson, who was a prolific journalist, was suffering with a cold when he camped at the bay, so there is little detail about it in his journal. General Prideaux was killed during the battle for Fort Niagara. Unfortunately, he stepped in the way of his own army's mortar and was decapitated. And the bay was subsequently named after him, Prideaux Bay. But over the years in which his name was, quote, barbarously mispronounced, end quote, his name disappeared. Perhaps Yankees found the name too hard to say, and it morphed from Bradlow to finally Braddock. Or maybe people confused him with another major general from the French and Indian War, killed in battle in Pennsylvania, Edward Braddock. Falding Skinner, known as Doc, frequently recounted a story that was told to him by his father about a Captain Braddock. According to the story, this Braddock was a notorious pirate who was chased into the bay by British ships. Depending on who was telling or retelling the story, rather than being caught with the goods, the pirate either dropped his loot into the bay or buried it near the base of a tree on shore. Whenever Doc told the story, afterwards there would be holes around all the trees near the bay. Also confusing over the years, is it Braddock's Bay or Braddock Bay? You'll find it both ways on historical maps, but once spellings were standardized, it is Braddock Bay, no apostrophe S. We do know for whom Barnard's Crossing was named. The railroad cut across the property of Mrs. Thomas Barnard, and the train station was called Barnard's Crossing. The United States Postal Service streamlined the name and eliminated the apostrophe S in crossing, so the area for the most part is now known simply as Barnard. Thanks for joining us this week. Next week we will continue to investigate the reasons for the names. Henpeck, Hoosick, and Hojack. What's in a name? This is Maureen Whalen, inviting you to join us next Tuesday for another Bicentennial Snapshot, presented by the Greece Historical Society.
Want to learn more from the Greece Historical Society and Museum? Then click that subscribe button for more content and hit that bell icon to get notified when there's more Bicentennial Snapshots. You can visit us on the web at GreeceHistoricalSociety.org. You can find us on Facebook at Greece Historical Society. You can follow us on Twitter at GreeceNYHistory. And you can stop in at the Greece Historical Society at 595 Long Pond Road.